think. Get an idea for how we think today's group. Let's start with a couple of examples and we'll see how we think. First of all, raise your hand if you believe that how students do on tests or quizzes should be a part of the quarterly grade. Hands up high. Okay. How many of you believe that the effort that a student has shown should be part of the quarterly grade? Who does not believe the effort a student shows should be part of the quarterly grade? How many of you believe homework should be graded for completion, not for points because you're practicing, and so it should really only be graded if you attempted and tried to do it as best you could? How many of you think it should be graded for correctness? So as you look around the room, you can see we have some nice splits on each of the categories, and we've only just begun. We've only just begun. As you think about all these different categories, and this is where, the reason why I wanted to do this tonight with the parents, and I always do this with the teachers, is because it really allows us to know, boy, grading is really personal, isn't it? We want our children to do the very best. We know that. We know that. But all different parents in this room, all different teachers in the room, all the educators, everyone in the room, our students, if they were here with us, would certainly be included, have different understandings and opinions about what should be valued and shaped in a grade that's reported out and what should not. And as we think about those things, because we have such a diverse audience of people tonight in our lines of thinking, you can see where it's impossible for any one teacher or any school to use only the practices that you believe to be the most beneficial only for your child. And even though we know everyone is here tonight because, you would not be a part of this kind of an accomplished school district and school such as St. Bridget's if you didn't really want the best for your children. So that just goes without saying. But because everyone has different opinions about how those things should be shaped, you can see it can be very difficult to try to figure out. And then here's the second part of the understanding. How then does a grade accurately communicate home to parents, guardians, grandparents, what exactly a child knows and can do if it also includes things like effort, homework completion, some school districts include attendance, some teachers think about participation, and I even wonder as I'm listing some of these things, how we even come to gather the evidence to know exactly what it is. Sometimes a teacher will say to me, well, participation's really big. I keep track. And every time that, if they answer 3 questions in a class period, they get X number of points. And then I always say, okay, that's interesting. Teachers, they work so hard, and I'm never one to judge. I come in and try to listen and work with teachers. That's what I do. So my next question is always, how do you gauge the kinds of questions students answer? For example, does a student get the same amount of participation points if he or she answers 3 questions during your class that were dualistic yes or no with a quick 1-sentence explanation as to why, versus a student who answers a question that's in depth and really explains something, provides evidence? Do those all come to be the same? In a system where we're after scoring, in a system where we're quantifying the learning, 3 participations in this class period equals the highest mark, we can't always answer that the quantity and the quality are both high. So we think about some of those kinds of things because this all factors into the understanding of how the grade is derived. Let me ask you this question. How many of you believe one of the primary purposes of doing assignments outside of school, homework, projects, etc., is for students to be able to practice and extend the learning that they've received in the classroom? Okay, so let's think about a sports analogy. If we're working with an athlete and we're coaching and we're trying to show an athlete new skills that he or she can master, we know that we're constantly providing feedback to shape performance towards an intended goal. What we're not doing is providing points every single moment while students are learning and growing, because we know practice is meant to point things out that are going well, to look at gaps that aren't going well, and to try to close those gaps to get the best possible performance when we play in a game. That's not to say you shouldn't practice hard and practice in the way that you expect to play in a game. But You are provided those opportunities to do so because you work with someone who can help shape your performance to be your very best, sort of in the big game, so to speak. And I always marvel at and wonder at, that's a philosophy in so many parts of our life, and how come that is not a philosophy when we think about education? When do we provide students with spaces to learn and grow so that by the time they arrive at a summative assessment, they really are ready to shine? They're really ready to show us exactly what they know and they can do, because they've had multiple opportunities to learn and to grow, and they've had multiple opportunities to show their teacher what they can do along the way and receive feedback that will help shape that performance. I was working with some teachers a couple of weeks ago, and one of them said to me, you know, I never put homework in the book for correctness because I have the best of intentioned parents. But sometimes I can't guarantee that mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or older sibling who in the best of intent to help maybe hasn't done a little bit more of the assignment than he or she should. And then I'm never sure if the child's actually done it. And so the teacher said, I really like to use formative assessments in my classroom to know where the students stand, because I always know that that's the student then doing the work. And certainly that's not a comment to discourage the wonderful assistance that we give to our children, but it is something to think about. It is something to think about. So all of these factors are things that we really consider, and when we look to a standards-based grading environment as we have here, we really find ways to report out on all these items that you have said are important to you, but they don't necessarily get averaged into or compiled into a grade. And that's where we get our part about what does a grade really communicate. You know, what does it communicate? Is it meant to communicate learning? Is it meant to communicate work ethic? Is it meant to communicate responsibility? And if it's only meant to communicate learning, that doesn't mean we don't find ways to communicate to you and to your sons and daughters about responsibility, very important, about fostering work ethic, very important. But we find ways to do that that aren't necessarily derived from one given grade across the quarter. So we know from Marzano, who's a leader today in education, and one of the things his line of research says is that the score a student receives on a test is often more dependent on who scores it and how he or she scores it than it is on what the student knows and understands. And that's something critical to think about. Something to think about. Okay, so we know one of the purpose of grades is to communicate. We know grades are a reporting system. We have one here too. We're going to tell you all about that, and I know you've seen it. Battelle for Kids, also a leader in the field of education, in 2006 did a study with teachers all around the state of Ohio. And they found that over 77% of teachers that they talked to reported using factors other than achievement to determine a grade. 50% of teachers surveyed in Ohio believe that the grades many students receive do not actually represent the quality of the work. That again is in a study cited online from Battelle for Kids. 50% of teachers surveyed in Ohio believe that the grades many students received, did not actually correlate to the quality of work. That to me is significant. Because if it's not communicating the quality of work, how can we ever stand behind what you know as we move you forward to the next teacher, as we move our 8th graders forward to high school? So, reporting tool considerations that we think about here. Number one, are we communicating responsibilities that are non-academic separately and clearly? We believe here in St. Bridget's that has definitely happened. That we're communicating those things well to you so that you know that your son or daughter is or isn't acting responsibly, is or isn't completing homework or assignments. But we also know that we're reporting those non-academic responsibilities separate from those that are academic. Do we communicate progress that a student has made on a particular skill? And that is to say, do we show you exactly where students are today and where they're headed so that they can master core components of the curriculum? Do we communicate levels of mastery of standards? We believe we do all of those things through rubrics, through a reporting out system using pluses, checks, I's and N's. This line of research from these questions we've used here come from Joan and Gusty, and just actually has come out in an article recently for Ed Leadership. So what are some of the steps our teachers and administrators have used to develop their part of standards-based assessment here at St. Bridget's? Number one, we know that we're always identifying the major learning goals or the standards that students will be expected to achieve at any grade level or course. And that's really important because knowing that we work in an environment like the Diocese of Columbus, who has worked so hard to align the core components of the curriculum, we know that mastery of the skills and knowledge at our grade level are critically important as students will move ahead within this system, or sometimes students leave this system into others. We also know the diocese is aligned with state and national curriculum as well. So we want students prepared wherever it is they move on to that next level. Two, that we constantly establish performance indicators for the learning goals for our standards. This involves deciding on what mastery performance will look like for each learning goal. Teachers are constantly engaged in conversations and research thinking about what exactly does a mastery performance look like with this standard. And that is what is communicated through learning targets to our students so that they know on a daily basis exactly what performance they are expected to show and what exactly they are expected to know as they continue learning throughout the year. We use benchmarks, the diocese, the state, federal benchmarks for assessing each goal or standard. And we develop reporting forms that communicate teachers' ongoing assessment of student learning progress, process, and product. We do those through a variety of ways that Ms. O'Reilly will share with you briefly in her presentation. Here's what we've been working hard to consider here as we work together in this learning community at St. Bridget. Number one, always thinking about what is the purpose of this assessment. And is it a formative assessment so that our students know we're using it to gather information that we can use to help them make progress? Or is it a summative assessment where it's now time for us to take a snapshot picture of exactly what our students know at this given moment? We believe that we clearly communicate the types of assessment to our students. And as I shared with you earlier, it's been really exciting to talk to some of the students in the building and for them to be able to articulate. My teacher's using this exit slip today to find out what we understood from class. And then she or he is going to use this to kind of talk about where we're headed tomorrow. And it's really exciting to hear the students articulate their understandings of their own assessment practices of their teachers. Design. Verify that the type of assessment we create is going to match the learning target. Teachers have worked really hard to say, if we're asking students to show us an analysis, to analyze something, what will that look like? That is not the same thing as expecting a student to recognize or identify something. And because we are a standards-based environment, we constantly shape the assessments, the feedback that we give to students based on exactly what performance we need to see. Nothing is ever massed together under an averaging of things to say, well, it's a B. Students are always expected to have mastery because we know the core components of the curriculum are expected to be learned and understood as they move through any educational system. And target. Identify what type of learning you expect your students to demonstrate. Are they supposed to show something they know? A thinking skill? Are they supposed to show you a skill like calculation in mathematics? Or create a product? Perhaps they've been studying ancient Greece and the goal for them is to create a pamphlet to show them how to travel through the different structures that they've learned about. And we always define mastery to the standard.